Introduced by Reed and Keenan, a bill for an act entitled an act appropriating funds to the Department of Justice to provide money to Lake County to offset past costs and costs in the biennium for law enforcement activities on the Flathead Reservation, providing an appropriation and providing an effective date.
Are there any corrections? History and title of the bill is read.
None, Mr. Chairman.
Clerk will read the sections.
1 through 3.
Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 479. What is your pleasure, Senator Hertz?
Mr. Chair, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having had under consideration House Bill 479, I recommend the same be concurred in, Mr. Chair.
Senator Hertz.
Mr. Chair, members of the body, this bill has to do with Public Law 280 on the Flathead Reservation. I'm not going to get into the details of that. We had a great discussion here on my Senate Bill 127, so I think everybody understands what's going on. This is a funding portion that's coming towards us from the House. This was Representative Reed's bill. They've had some great whereas clauses, but what this bill's intent to do is to continue to provide some funding for Lake County, which, if you recall, they're spending about $5 million a year on implementing Public Law 280. So this is some funds to keep the conversation going between Lake County, CSKT tribe, state of Montana, and the federal government, because what we don't want to see is Lake County walking away from this, which that is their intent. They can no longer afford it, and if they walk away, the state of Montana, according to code, it says they have obligated and bound itself to the enforcement of this, and my fear is then they will have to come in and provide law enforcement at a much higher cost. So I'm available for questions, but I'd like to get this bill down to finance and claims so we can continue to work on it. Thank you.
Are there any amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I move to amend House Bill 479 with Amendment HB 0479.003.001, signed Senator Olson.
Senator Olson, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I move that House Bill 479 be amended and request that Amendment HB 479.3.1 be posted and deemed read, Mr. Chair.
Senator Olson.
Mr. Chair, members, I understand that there is a complex PL 280 situation. That's really not we don't really need to get involved in that as the legislature. But I did also meet with the commissioners. I also heard the hearings. I also do believe that Lake County does indeed need money to provide quality conditions in their law enforcement system. Now, this bill appropriates money to Lake County. My amendment makes it clear that we're appropriating money to Lake County. And the issue that was raised in the committee is that there should be more sideboards. So in the amendment, I made it clear that the sideboard should go specifically to what we know, and that everybody in Lake County knows that the conditions of the jail do not meet constitutional standards. This is part of the law enforcement activities that really need to be addressed immediately. And so this appropriation to Lake County is needed, and by the amendment, it goes directly to the sideboards of bringing the jail conditions into constitutional standards. The amendment takes out all the whereas clauses, which just cloud the issue for me as somebody voting on this bill, and makes it about something that, one, we can say we should get involved in, but maybe we shouldn't. But whether we want to or not, those are all whereas clauses, and they don't mean anything, so they should be stricken. And frankly, I want to support I do believe it's our job as government to make sure that the justice system works for everybody in this state, and that includes making sure that the law enforcement activities are within constitutional standards, and I want to be able to vote to give Lake County some money. So please vote for this amendment. Thank you all.
Is there discussion on the amendment? Senator Hertz.
Mr. Chairman of the bodies, I would ask you to oppose this amendment. There's no doubt that the Lake County Jail needs some funding, probably more like to the tune of $20 million. It needs a lot of work. The county has done some recent work lately and done what they can with what they have. But this isn't something that the taxpayers of Lake County can afford to attempt to do. Right now, our primary obligation is to make sure we can continue to keep Public Law 280 working on the reservation and working with CSKT, the state of Montana, and the federal government. So I would ask you to oppose this amendment. The whereas clauses are very important in here. It explains where the state's position is on this. And we worked hard on this amendment over in the Senate through House Appropriations and with Representative Mercer over there, former federal attorney. He understands the process very well. And that's where we came to this bill. I'd ask you to resist this amendment.
There being no further discussion, does sponsor wish to close?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I would just like to add that the sponsor of this bill is truly neutral. What he says is what's important is that Lake County does need the money, and that Lake County does have unconstitutional conditions currently going on that will cost the state, will cost that county, and cost the state a lot more money. So I disagree that the whereas clauses, if they were so important, they wouldn't be in whereas clauses. And I just really do think that the meat of this is money going to Lake County, and if we make it clean like that, then maybe we can accomplish that goal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The question now arises on the amendment of Senator Olson that House Bill 479 be amended. As many are in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Does any member wish to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk will record the vote.
Mr. Chairman, 20 senators vote aye and 30 senators vote nay.
20 senators having voted aye and 30 senators having voted no, the amendment has not gone on the bill. Is there further discussion on the bill? Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the carrier.
Senator Hertz, do you yield? Senator Marshall.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hertz, I asked you a similar question on your bill when you carried it in committee, but I just wanted to see if you would talk about, I will just say, have some concerns about there not being sideboards and being specific about how the state money is going to be spent. But I know that when we discussed your bill, you were able to explain to me that you felt that folks were committed to being at the table with the tribes, the community, and working towards addressing mental health, addiction, recidivism, over incarceration. Of course, I don't want Montana just building another jail and incarcerating more Indians. And so I was just wanting to see if you could speak to that and let me know what the commitment is there.
Mr. Chair, Senator, yes, my commitment's the same, and we discussed Senate Bill 127. I've talked to Chairman McDonald and other individuals, and we want to do what's going to work in Lake County, particularly for tribal members. We know a number of incarcerations are related to drug issues, and as we all know, putting somebody in jail just for certain types of drug issues isn't the best strategy. We need to work on rehabilitation centers and make sure that we provide them the support that they need to get their life moving in the right direction, and I'm 100% committed to that. Also, if we need to put some sideboards on spending on this down in finance and claims, I'm more than happy, and I'm sure Senator Reed, Senator Solomon, we're all willing to work on those sideboards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just speak to the bill briefly.
Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Senator Hertz, for elaborating on that and sharing that information. For me, CSKT is the only PL 280 reservation in Montana. And if you aren't familiar with how that's structured, the county, as we've talked about many times, they take on the felonies, and the tribes are handle the misdemeanors. And because of that, a lot of the larger portion or numbers of natives incarcerated at Department of Corrections are from CSKT. I think the incarceration, where natives make up around 7% of the state population and about 23% or more of the state prison population. So, you can see why I would have concerns with that, and why it's important to me that we actually not continue to just kind of kick the can down the road or put Band-Aids on things, and actually start looking at ways to work together to address recidivism and addiction, mental health issues, because at the end of the day, we want people to have long, prosperous, successful lives in Montana. And so, because Senator Hertz has assured me that they're committed to that, I'm going to support the bill today.
There being no further discussion, Senator Hertz, do you care to close? And Senator has closed. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Hertz that when this committee does rise and report after having had under consideration House Bill 479, it recommend the same be concurred in. As many are in favor of the motion will signify by voting aye. Those opposed will vote no. Does any member wish to change his or her vote? If not, the clerk will record the vote.
Mr. Chairman, 37 senators vote aye and 13 senators vote nay.
37 senators having voted aye and 13 senators having voted no. House Bill 479 has been concurred in on second reading. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill